我最近写了一本书，我写给中国的一封情书。
China was very different than I thought it was going to be.
There are many people in America who respect China and want very close relations with this country.
I like China, and I like truth, and I like objectivity and giving the benefit of the doubt to the humans that live here in this country. My name is Nathan Rich. I came to China first in 2012 on a business trip. And when I first got here, I was very surprised by the fact that I didn't see anything that I expected to see. China was very different than I thought it was going to be. And so I took a great interest in discovering why was China so different than I expected. And was that something that was wrong with me or with the information that I was getting about China? And that started me down this path of researching and checking out the history of China and exploring the cities. And eventually I started making videos talking about what I consider to be misconceptions and misunderstandings about China, specifically from the West and more from the United States and sometimes Europe.
My name is Brian Linden. I was born and raised in Chicago, and I first came to China in 1984. When we first started Xini Yuan, really about 20 years ago, our goal was to take a Chinese, a historic building, a heritage site, and preserve it, not change it. We wanted our village neighbors to be proud. The buildings were built by their ancestors. We wanted them to stand as a testament, as something that they're very proud of. Because of I Ching, I had a little more time on my hands. So I decided to take that time, use that time to write down many of my experiences that I have had in China over the past 38 years. I wrote over about a 1-year period. What I want to do though is to be sure that I can also kind of promote the book and tell the stories, not just give somebody, the reader, the book, but I also want to be there in places like America to also tell the stories and share, deeply, authentically, and genuinely my experiences here. China's culture of, say, 5,000 years, the depth of this culture is to me so amazing. And I feel that 38 years here, I have still so much to learn. And that realization makes me think of all the people outside of China who have never been here, whose only experience of China has maybe been Chinese food.
China is a very complex society. It's not just a country, it's also kind of a civilization built with many different provinces and ethnicities inside of it. But it's really a reflection of the past that it has. And I think to understand China, you really have to understand the history of China. When I see China, when I see Chinese people, especially in times of distress, like under COVID, or at work, or just with their families, the way that I see them is in a different context than most people see them. I really see this beauty coming through this culture and influencing the way that they think and the way that they care about each other. China in particular is a fascinating subject to study, and the culture is so thick and rich that it's just over every single person that you see.
I took the high-speed train, and throughout Laos, I've been to Laos many times, and it used to take me 8 to 10 hours to go from Vientiane to Luang Prabang. This time it took me 2 hours, and it's all because of China's high-speed train. I interacted with the Lao people, and the most common word or answer I got was hope. The Lao people were outside the train stations taking photos. It's become a tourist destination. They are so proud of this. Many foreign countries were not there to build this with the Laotian people and the Laotian government. China did it.
America, the West, When I see them describing events in China that I'm literally standing in the middle of, and I'm looking at their description and it doesn't match reality, that confuses me and it makes me annoyed and it makes me want to make videos talking about the actual truth of it. The culture war in America is very destructive on many levels, but one of the things that we Americans have learned in the past, is that a good way to unify people is with war. These days, especially since the trade war, since COVID, since the war in Ukraine, all these things have been used by some people in the United States to bolster up this image of China as a big threat to the world. And they constantly use terms like China's expansionism, or their aggressivism, or their desire to take over or to replace America. They use these very loaded terms. Their information is very lacking. And then I think from the American side, something that we can do is a lot more listening to the individual and a lot less repeating the talking points that we've seen on TV and all the scary sounding cliches and sort of stereotypes and oh, it's junk because it's made in China. Like the iPhones, this kind of outdated mentality that we have towards China, and really readjust and take a look at why we don't question things like that China's an expansionist country, even though it hasn't done any expanding in like 100 years, this type of thing. That we have a lot of this cognitive dissonance when we look at the reality versus the frankly lies that we're often told by media. I like China, and I like truth, and I like objectivity and giving the benefit of the doubt to the humans that live here in this country.
While the governments may sometimes have arguments or may have conflicts, it doesn't mean that I have to have a conflict with my Chinese neighbors, with my Chinese friends. And it doesn't mean that I can't share the charm of China with my friends back in America. In many ways in China, we find a very open and welcoming kind of community that supports our efforts. And I hope that America and the outside world will be equally welcoming to people like us who are trying to just share different stories. I have experienced throughout 38 years here, if we seriously think about it, we all benefit so much from that hospitality when we are in China. And this is something that I hope that we can share with the outside world. This is the magic syrup. This is the magic sauce. China should embrace that 2,500-year-old tradition and charm the world and use its soft power and really try to focus a little more on this. In this regard, I feel that China should, if it were to play a larger role in the world, it should do it very softly. It should be very Taoist. This will happen. China's march to the global power will naturally occur. I believe that Asian philosophy, especially Taoist philosophy, is so effective. And I feel that if we could just slowly continue to push forward, this is going to occur naturally. And it's going to occur in a way that is probably going to be very, very good for the whole world.